Welcome to this episode of Tech Inspection, the show where we check out everything and learn a ton about the world of drag racing. And today we are checking out Holley EFI, and we have Pete Harrell and Doug Flynn from Holley coming onto the show today. Brian Wagner, what's going on, dude?
Not much, man. Getting ready to get a really good deep look here at Holley EFI and everything it has to offer from two very knowledgeable people, one of which is the person that helps program the stuff.
Yeah, for sure, because I've actually had a couple different Holley systems on a couple of my cars, and I have like the base knowledge you need to run that system, but I really liked it, and I am looking forward to having these guys on the show and picking their brains and getting the ins and outs of the system for sure. So let's just move right into the fun segment. Wagner, I believe you had something really interesting. I'm going to pull it up right now, but go ahead and give us a little bit of an intro for it.
Yeah, so in one of my many adventures in YouTube land, I found the video of this Suzuki Samurai powered by a Toyota 1.8 liter engine, which is an interesting combination in amongst itself. But as you can see in the video,
I'm actually going to play it right now on my computer.
Yeah, it's definitely a very potent combination to say the least, especially when throw that Samurai in there, and that the video kind of speaks for itself for what happens.
Yeah, it packs the tires for the front half of the track, and the first thing that caught my eye is the fact that it's a Suzuki Samurai, which are really good for playing off-road, lifting a little bit, modifying, and obviously it packs the tires because it probably doesn't weigh anything. And my second thought was, man, with wheelie bars, that car would probably be a rocket ship.
Well, if you look at it on the back of the flatbed, it definitely has that stanced look to it. So That thing is it's definitely making a trip to the chassis shop for sure to get those leaf springs tuned up just a smidge.
It's something you don't see very often. Like I said, usually when you're talking about Suzuki Samurai, you see it lifted off-road, whatever, but that one is a very, very different way to look at something like that. So thank you for bringing that on. And then just to give a little bit of an overview of what we're going to be talking about, if you haven't seen Tech Inspection, we dive in depth on different specific topics each week, and we're talking about Holley EFI and why it's so popular in the drag racing world, and then maybe even touch on some things where some other motorsports or other applications that it might be used for once we have our guests on. So first, I think we have Doug Flynn coming on. Is that right, Brian?
Yeah, Doug will be joining us. He's an engineer at Holley with the EFI portion of the show. Very knowledgeable individual that's going to be able to answer some of our fun questions we have for him.
Absolutely. So let's go ahead and get him on the line and start talking to him about all this stuff. Well, hey, Doug, great to have you on the show. Really appreciate you taking the time to talk with us, and let's just get right into it. I had just a broad question for you about your role and what you do to make the Holley software for all the new EFI stuff function and work like it's supposed to.
Okay. Well, I've worked at Holley for 20 years. Seems like a lot less, but it's been a long time. And about 10 years ago, Holley asked us for a new fuel injection system, and I had the pleasure with working with a couple of friends of mine, Fred and Sean. Fred does all the hardware design and the firmware coding, and Sean does all the user interface, all the software. And I'm kind of the guy that tells them how to make things look and tick and all that. I've been racing since I was a little kid, and I kind of, I interface with the customers, know what they want, and so I tell those smart guys what to do. And we work together, and the goal with all the Holley EFI stuff was to make it really intuitive and simple to use, but full of features, and not have to, we didn't want to have somebody have to hire an engineer to tune their car for them or go to the track with them.
Kind of going off of that, Doug, drag racing is its own interesting animal when it comes to motorsports. Let's say I'm going to swap my car with a Holley EFI system. Outside of the typical very basic tuning kind of stuff you need to worry about, what are some of the features that a racer should, the key features that a racer should be knowing about when it comes to using a Holley EFI system?
Well, I mean, one of the big things today that's happened in drag racing, as we all know, the cars have gotten ridiculously quick. What used to be the fastest, X275 broke into the fours. It wasn't that long ago, and now you've got X in the 420s. Ultra Street used to be a low 5 second class, and now that's a mid 4 second class. I mean, things got crazy, and really one of the biggest things I think that EFI and electronics have brought to the plate is the power management, um, traction control, being a boost control, multi stages of nitrous, all that kind of stuff has allowed the cars to get to the performance to where they have. The engine reliability is a lot better. Um, and just the tuning tools, those tuning tools, the data that the systems give back to the racers to tell them where they can apply more power and all that, I think has really opened up the door on a lot of stuff.
So I had a question about uh, basically when Holley EFI came about. When I first saw it, it was probably 2008, 2007, and I was curious if there was like a lack of a good software in drag racing for fuel injection, or what perpetuated you guys to say, hey, like we make killer carburetors, but like let's jump into fuel injection.
Yeah, well, one of the things I've seen in the past is some of the EFI systems, the software interface was designed by the engineer that made the system. And obviously you need really smart people to do the hardware design and the code and all that works. But when you have that same guy try to do the user interface for the customer, 9 times out of 10, that's the wrong guy to be making that, because if he makes it how he wants it, it's going to be full of everything. I've always told those guys, I said the perfect EFI for a racer is you smash the window in the car, you throw it in there, it installs itself and it tunes itself, and you go set the record. And people don't want to be jacking around, tinkering around. There's excitement and fun and tuning and all that, but you don't want to be, most people just want to go win and not sit there and analyze data for a week and all that kind of stuff. And it's I kind of brought that to the plate because I'm not as bright as those guys, and I'm a racer and understand what racers want, and so bringing it to the plate that, hey guys, make it simple to use. There's some systems out there where I think they want it to be complicated, so going back to that, they want only a select amount of people to be able to actually tune a car, and we want everybody to have the features and be successful. And to be clear on something, we never want to exclude the tuners. And I'm friends with most of those guys, and the realism is having it be easier to use actually has helped the tuners, because it's allowed more people to do this. And there's still a shortage of good tuners, and there's always a place for Billy Stocklands and on and on and on and on. So I mean, I think what one of the things Holley EFI has brought to the plate is it's allowed a lot more people to get into EFI, have some success, and then people like a Billy Stockland to take teams that want his skills and expertise to the next level, which obviously he's done.
Kind of going off of that, as a racer and a tuner, you always want to try to glean as much data as you can off of run. Holley, the Holley EFI systems have a pretty robust data visualization tools. They don't pay me to speak a lot. It's a hard word to say. What have you guys kind of incorporated into the EFI system to really make racers be able to use those tools to see what the data is telling them?
Yeah, well, we have our own data log review tool. Holley EFI, like a lot of the EFI systems, also can port data into RacePack. And, of course, the Holley brand owns RacePack now, so there's no competition there. But people that are familiar with RacePack, which obviously there's many people that have been using that for years and decades, they can review the Holley data along with the RacePack data. Or people that were newer and weren't around RacePack, a lot of those guys use the data log software that we have. And you get all the key feedback, G meter, drive shaft, what all the power apply is doing at the time for nitrous or boost and all that, and you could put that all together and see it all at once. You see what the input it is, which is your tune, and then you see what the output is, which is, the data log, and put that all together. And it's not too hard to do once you get used to it.
So I have a pretty straightforward question, and this is actually the last one I had for you. It's, why do you think Holley EFI became so popular so quickly after it was released?
Well, I think the reason goes back to what I was saying about our goals. I had implied that, I told the smart guys what to do, and that wasn't really totally the case. I have a lot of friends race, other companies, and I'd always try to get with the expert in that area and get their feedback. And a perfect example of that was the Nitrous. Monty Smith was a super good friend of mine. I miss him terribly. And Monty and I worked together on the Nitrous stuff, and Chad Henderson's car, which a lot of people know Chad's Grand National. That was the first, big Nitrous car to run Holley EFI. And back then, dry nitrous, everybody said you can't do it. And now I think everybody says if you're going to run a lot of nitrous, you want to run it dry and run it with EFI. And so getting with people that were experts in the certain areas and trying to put that right into the system and not think we knew more than, people that do this every day, I think that was a big key.
Right on. And, to kind of wrap things up here, Doug, looking into your crystal ball, what do you see in the future of drag racing EFI systems? With Holley in general, where's the map taking you guys?
Well, one of the things we're working on now is powertrain control, shifting control, converter lockups. I think the gains in the last year, a lot of that's been through the transmissions and the converter lockups, the Linkos and all that kind of stuff. So we're working on being able to, work with all that stuff integrated with the system. That's a big thing. And then I think down the road for everybody, one of the next level things is, maybe a little, I'll call it artificial intelligence, to maybe give better feedback to the racers on what the car's doing to the next level. What things do now is, gives a lot of detail, but, it's still, you got to really know what you're doing to super analyze that data. And I think the more the companies can do to provide tools to give even deeper feedback, it's going to be the next level of knocking out a few hundreds here and there in the cars.
That's perfect, Doug. Like I said, I really appreciate having you on the show, and you taking the time. You're a wealth of knowledge, and every week we run into this issue where it's like, dude, I just want to talk to this guy for like an hour, but we just flat out can't. So I just want to say thank you, and if you had anything else that you wanted to talk about here on the show, have at it. But if not, I think we're good. What about you, Wagner?
No, I think that definitely ties everything with a bow on it. We'll have to add Doug to that list of people we bring back on in the future for other shows.
That'd be awesome. I really appreciate the time. Be happy to do that. Thanks, guys.
All right. Thanks, Doug.
Thanks, Doug.
Okay. Take care.
I actually really enjoyed how he brought up the nitrous situation, from in the past to now, because that was one thing that I saw, at least here on the West Coast, is everybody ran wet systems. Like, just the safest, it's the easiest. They just ran wet systems, and that's the way it was. And it completely transitioned to like now, it's like, oh no, you run a dry system and you run fuel injection. And looking through the tables of my old Holley EFI system, like one of the first generation Dominators, it's like, holy cow, there are so many controls in here and so many different options. To really dive in, and if I want to have multiple stages of nitrous, this thing has it on lock.
Yeah, the dude that we put on his dragster that stores it at my house, he wants to put nitrous on the thing. I'm like, let's just get this thing running. Let's just get it working, understand how to tune it before we decide to really try to blow it up. Because that motor's not meant for nitrous. And I'm like, there's not going to be a whole lot of room for error, Rick.
Hey, whoa. Every engine is made for nitrous. It's just a matter of how far and how much nitrous you're going to hit it with. But we can talk about that later. Coming up next on the show, we have Pete Harrell. Hey, Pete, how's it going, man?
Good. How are you?
Doing all right. I just wanted to thank you for coming on, and I know you use Holley EFI and quite a bit of stuff, and I'm just going to dive in. And my first question that I had for you is, when did you start using Holley EFI, and also why do you continue to use it on almost everything? Because I see a lot of cars you work on, a lot of engine platforms, and you pretty much consistently go with Holley.
Okay, so that's actually a pretty interesting story in my situation. So, I've been doing the fuel injection thing for, I don't know, a million years now. Back, started with Speed Pro, which morphed into over time Fast and XFI, and we also use Big Stuff for a multitude of different ones. And I am one that has to be dragged kicking and screaming into new stuff sometimes. So what I had worked. I don't need I wasn't really, I'm not one to get on the latest little school bus of new stuff. So, but I had a my customers always are. They want the latest gadget or whatever, some of them do anyhow. And I had a customer that just had to have Holley, and I didn't want to mess with it because I didn't have time to do anything new, whatever. So anyhow, he was just adamant on this. The next thing I know, his car has Holley on it, right? And we're to the point where we're gonna start it. Well, first of all, let's go backtrack a little bit. This is a 302 based Ford with a great big turbo, right? And it has huge injectors, and it will never idle right. You can get it to idle pretty good right now, and then you make a pass, put a bunch of heat in it. By the time it's shut down in the shutdown area, it's trying to idle at 2,500, and then you fix that, and then it won't idle the other way, right? And some of this is a function of temperature and these great big injectors that we're trying to just trickle on a little itty bitty motor. So they just didn't like that. Well, anyhow, long story short, we put this Holley on this car, and we just load some random fuel map in it and hit the switch. Well, instantly, the thing idles better than the car ever had before under any circumstance, right? Completely untuned, right? And the reason for this is that I'm no fuel injection engineer, but the driver boxes and stuff in the Holley were just superior, and it could manage these injectors at real low duty cycles, and they were doing what they're told to do. And therefore the motor's like, hey, I kind of like this, and it would run a lot better. So that's what got me started on Holley. And then that morphed into a million other things because then I started to realize the capabilities of the fuel injection system, in general. Nowadays we use these things for, you name it, just all kinds of stuff. I've used it on race cars to literally change the shape of the race car while it's going down the track, just do all kinds of things. But so it started for one reason, and now it continues for others, I guess you could say.
Pete, kind of going off of that there, you mentioned that car had a big old turbo on it. When it comes with like how you tune with a Holley and the EFI system, what kind of features does it offer you as a tuner for that control of a big power adder?
Okay, well, a lot nowadays. When it first started out, once again, I had to be drug kicking and screaming to try new things with it, because we used AMS 2000, still do on a lot of cars, I didn't want to try Holley's boost control. It couldn't be as good, But nowadays, the more we use the stuff, we use it for pretty much everything. We got cars where we almost exclusively use the Mark Rogers car has no other box on the car except for the Holley box. Does all the data logging, traction control, boost control, engine management, transmission stuff, you name it, and that's just a progression. The more we use it, the more we find things we can do with it, with the inputs and outputs. And it took me a while to kind of wrap my head around what that stuff is capable of doing, because when you come from stuff that isn't capable of doing that, it just takes you a while to realize, oh, okay, well, we can monitor all this stuff with the same box, and then we can make output decisions based on that information and run all kinds of stuff. And it's just kind of limitless on what you can do,
So I have a question for you, Pete. If you had to pick 3 of your like favorite features that the Holley has that maybe some other systems out there don't have or what have you, what would you say are your 3 favorite options with Holley that maybe a lot of people don't even realize exist?
Okay, well, first of all, over the years, we've kind of developed a lot of different ways as far as managing turbos and spooling turbos and that type of thing. And the Holley has what they call 2D tables, where I do a lot of this kind of voodoo stuff, right? And so that would be definitely probably number 1, because you can be really creative in there and do a lot of weird stuff and make things work that probably didn't work before or were at least very difficult to do, So that would be one. Another would be, I would say, integration with the Davis traction control, which I'm a big proponent of. I use it when I have my, druthers on various cars, and they kind of work hand in hand. So that's great. And the third, I guess I would say, would just be the inputs and outputs in general. You can monitor anything or cause anything you can imagine to happen, for the most part, while you're going down the racetrack. And that just allows you to do whatever you can think of. If you're a creative person, it's a blank canvas to finger paint on.
So I have a really quick follow-up question, Pete. You say that you use it with like the Davis, like the profiler, correct?
Right. Or well, in this case, it would be what we call a PFEFI, or Profiler EFI module.
Okay.
Right. Which is essentially the profiler in a smaller box that integrates with fuel injection, such as Holley.
And that was leading right into my question perfectly. Is why do you use that in conjunction with the Holley, and when did that all come about? Because the first Dominators, I don't believe, had traction control, and now like they come pretty much exclusively, like if you get a Dominator, it has traction control built in. And I wanted to know what your opinion was and your expertise of like profiler or Holley with the little integrated piece.
Okay, so the Dominator, you have the option of purchasing basically a software purchase of the traction control. I think it's about $500, right? And that allows you to turn that on, right? And what it is in the Holley system is pretty much literally, it's the ARC module software. If you're familiar with that, back in the day, we had the MSD ARC module for traction control, right?
Sure. Yep.
And it's an effective, in many ways, easy to use system for traction control. And that's what that is. The other option is the Davis integration there, and it's just quicker and faster. And in the world of traction control, speed is everything, right? It's probably a little more complicated, but the software allows you to really dial in where you want the tire at a particular point in time in the run. And it's my weapon of choice, and same goes for a lot of people. But it's a very effective tool, and it's just more gooder, I guess you'd say. Than it's just like anything. You get what you pay for, So
Sure.
Well, I think that pretty much puts a nice bow on things there, Pete. Your expertise is always appreciated for sure, and definitely learned a lot from you here about how this Holley stuff works and how you use it from a tuner aspect in drag racing.
Yeah, it's a great box, and another benefit is we work with some of the engineer types at Holley, and there's a lot of back and forth between, they ask us, does this work, when they have something new, and then we say, how about you do this? And sometimes they listen, sometimes they don't. but that's a pretty good deal too, you know.
Sure. All right. Well, Pete, we're going to have to let you go. We're running out of time, but just again, thank you so much for making it on the show, and we appreciate all your input and your expertise for sure.
No problem. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks, man. That was really cool having Pete on the show. A lot of really good insight. He has so much knowledge. It's crazy to even think about. I'm sure he's forgotten more than I'll ever know about fuel injection, but something really interesting, Wagner, that I wanted to get your thoughts on is the fact that he talked about how, like, he can be a little stubborn and he's not big on jumping on the bandwagon, and he tried the Holley and then he was just like, from there it was just, that's it. That's all we're going to use. That's all we're going to run. And also too, because LS engines, like, he seems to do, you know, a lot of that on like the lower budget racers, and that's kind of a bandwagon thing too. But I just loved that he brought that up. Like, I am not one to change. I like my things the way I like them, but man, this Holley stuff's great.
Well, I can speak from my own personal experience. You know, with our one project for Dragzine, we swapped a Holley system, one of the snipers, onto a big block dragster for bracket racing, and it really was bolted on, four wires, run through the setup wizard, and bam, the car fired right up and worked. And just how the whole system's laid out, honestly, it has a great feel for drag racers, and there's a lot of functionality in there on how we can use it, what we do. And with the resources Holley offers, it's a great system to use for someone that's just trying to tiptoe into drag racing EFI, and then as you grow, you can expand it even more.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. So that wraps this episode of Tech Inspection. Wagner, you know, thank you for your help. I really appreciate it. And also our guests for coming onto the show. And make sure to stay tuned for the newest episode next week coming out of Tech Inspection, and check out all of our other shows right here on Speed Video.